Right.
So Jimmy is really, for a lot of people, he really is the beginning.
Oh, without a doubt. If it weren't for Jimmy Stuard, I don't even know where. He inspired so many people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We all used to just hang there, like, because it was. I've never heard anybody do that sort of thing with music and records. After I figured it all out pretty quick, like.
But he was making them a little longer than they were. Using the double two sides.
Oh, like mixing from instrumental and remixing them, making the 3-minute ones longer, 5 minutes, and doing the production like back then.
Right.
So, and that's. And I go home for my 14th birthday. I asked my mother. She said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "A sound system." And so, in Radio Shack, that's all. So, in Radio Shack, they had a little sound system. It was like, I don't know, $45 or something, with a little preamp and tuner and a BSR turntable with the ohm speakers all together for $45. So she bought it to me. I saved up for another month and I bought another BSR turntable.
You already knew.
Yeah, so I just. After this is the first time I went to the 12, I said I want to do this, and so I just started going, buying records everywhere I could
and practicing things at home.
Yeah, at home in the daytime after school, every chance I got, everybody would be out playing, I'd be playing records.
Now, how much trial and error was involved when you were doing it at home versus what you were watching Jimmy do? Were you adopting techniques that Jimmy was doing?
Absolutely, I was watching it. Because one time I said, "How do you do that?" And he goes, "How do you, get it on precise like that?" And he goes, "My dear, it's a measure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4." And he goes, "That's a measure." So, and and he just said, "You just count them down. 4, 6, 4, 8, 16, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
And it came in, he was smart enough to know, I know he's smart enough to get, if I say it this way, he'll get it like that. And that's all he did. And I didn't really ask him a lot of questions or anything, and he just gave me those little tidbits, and I just watched and waited and hung out the right people, and
What are the songs you recall from him making big at the 1270?
Somebody's Gotta Go by Mike and Bill.
Somebody's Gotta Go.
Somebody's Gotta Go. Rain 2000 by Titanic with Sultana on the other side.
Rain 2000?
Mm-hmm. On Epic Records, 1972. Fabulous sounding. You can get it on import now.
Yeah.
It's a must-have if you're a disc jockey, whether you're old or new. It's a must-have. Those kind of records are a must-have.
Right.
I Got It by Gloria Spencer. She was a big old black woman, 600 pounds of heart and soul gospel. Have you ever heard that song, I Got It?
If I have, I don't remember.
Oh, well.
I'm going to be going home and listening to all of these.
A Little Bit of Love by Brenda and the Tabulations. Which was a real big hit in New York. He used to do that with, that was the big one he used to do. That's when I said, I want to do this. There was a song by a woman named Lynn Roman, Stop, I Don't Need No Sympathy.
Yeah.
And at the 12, he did that mix forever. But it would stop, and on the break he would go into People, A Little Bit of Love, and it was just incredible. Yeah. And that's when I really decided. I went home and I practiced that. I would make up my own little sets and play Love Is the Message and The Sound of Philadelphia. All on 45, really.
Sure.
And I just practiced, you know what I mean?
Now, who were you meeting at the 12 at this time? Have you met Carol then, or have you met...
No, I didn't meet Carol until a couple of years later up on Com Ave where Paradise is.
Okay.
Used to be a club called the Land of Oz. And the guy who ran it was Ron Zappi, and his boyfriend was Ricky Merriweather, who was also an original member of the Boston Record Pool, who has since died. He was the head disc jockey, and I don't even know where I met. I think I met Ricky at 1270 in Cabaret. I forgot all about Cabaret, which is 15 Lansdowne Street.
Right.
Well, anyway, I started going up there, and Ricky said, "You want a job?" And I said, "Yeah," because he knew me, and I joined the record pool by this time.
Right.
I was a kid. I really was.
Sure.
I was a kid. But anyway, I got a job up there, and that's where I met Carol.
Was that your first job, or was it?
No, my first job was a place called the Cowardly Lion, where Val worked over behind Emerson Theater there, down that alley, which it's the other side. You're going on one side where the estate is.
Right.
But that's the back entrance. But on the other side, there was a bar called The Other Side, and And on the other side was called the Cowardly Lion, and I only worked there for like 2 weeks. Like I lasted 2 weeks, but it was my first. That was my first job.
Yeah.
I was probably, I think I was 15.
First job playing music.
Yeah.
Well, why did you only last 2 weeks?
Because I didn't really have any experience.
And were you playing for a lot of people right away?
No, it was like Tuesday and Wednesday. People came in and they were dancing and everything, but I really didn't have experience. But the guy who was the manager, I can't think of his name. He's a redhead guy with glasses, and he had a crusher. I guess he liked chicken, you know. And that's really why I got the job. You know what I mean? He wanted to know her on the nub.
Dangerous when you're young. And
oh, honey, well, you know. That's why I say they used to be cookies, now they're jelly cakes. I'm so silly sometimes. But that was my very first job, and the pay was $18.50 a night. I lasted about 2 weeks there. And it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun, and I remember going here. I was hanging with Val at the time. I had just met Val through some transsexuals that I grew up with in East Boston, who are since dead. But that's how I met Val, and you know, he was giving me records, and I met Jimmy Fournier, who's passed away, and I met, you know, Jimmy Stuard and Conrad. I met all of them, so they kind of took me under their wing, like so.
Right.
And that's
Danae by that.
Danae too. Like Danae, I used to go sit in the booth with Danae until he hurt his fingers at Lansdowne Street. Danae didn't speak to me for like almost 30 years. He wouldn't talk to me because I got the job after him, and he just, you know, she was a tortured soul, Miss Danae. We loved her, but he wouldn't speak to me for a very long time. Before Lansdowne Street, though, me and Danae got along famously. Yeah. You know, so.
And he was the other one along with Jimmy who would kind of really
paved the way.
Paved it almost. They were because they lived together, right?
For a while there, yeah.
So they were developing a lot of these, probably learning from each other, and
and Danae did it a different way. Danae did fast cuts a lot back then,
right?
But he also mixed too. But he did fast cuts a lot.
Yeah.
And Jim, you know what? They both used to do both of it, like blends. Sometimes,
it depends on
what the mood is and
what the record is.
Right. So. One time, Jimmy Stuard, not to get off track, but one time he was playing Free Man by South Shore Commission, and on the break, he just fast cut into Do It Any Way You Wanna.
Yeah.
And the crowd went, woo! And he goes, that's knowing your crowd, my dear. He pulled his glasses down.
Well, that is probably the most important thing.
Is knowing your crowd.
Yeah.
You know? And I say that I learned a lot from him. And he goes, you gotta know your crowd. You just gotta feel it. He would just say to me, you know?
Yeah.
And I just remember those things.
But it does involve a certain amount of like intellectual skill. Though,
absolutely.
So I've always found that tension for me as a DJ. It's hard to know when I'm thinking too much about what I'm doing versus just feeling what I should be doing.
Right, because sometimes you can overthink it. You know what I mean? But most of the time, I just went in there and did what I felt. Like, you know, and I had a pretty good career while it was going. Like, I worked at some wonderful clubs for a long time. So
were you nervous when you started playing?
You know what? You get right over it. Like after, I started at the Cowardly. I'm up at the Land of Oz. Ricky. It was like Tuesday and Wednesday, and I just met Paul Egan at the time. He was 18. I just turned 15.
So was Oz the job you get after the Cowardly Lion?
Yeah,
basically?
yeah.
Okay.
And I worked there for a long time, for like 2 years or so, in fact. And that's where I met Carol, because they had a lesbian night at the time, and I met Carol and Rose, her friend at the time, and that's where I met Carol.
Right.
But
and the music is now evolving by now. Is it?
Oh yeah, they're coming out with longer mixes. Like when I first started, it was Honeybee, Gloria Gaynor, and things were on 45, and you know there were a few long things, but nothing over. But by 1975, you know they're making 45, the disco mix, 5 minutes, and you know what I mean, and putting it all together. And then 12 Inches came out. Step One did that Disco Gold album. I guess that was around 1975. It had to be.
And what did you think of the development of the 12-inch? I know that everybody fought for it with the record labels, right? Because they would say to the labels, we could use something longer.
Right, and in a format that was easier than 45.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So it was more, I guess, all right, I wanted to save this for a minute because I think that the development of the 12-inch is consistent with the development of technology over the course of the decades in dance music, and whether it's digital DJing or any of that stuff, right?
Yes.
So all of it in some ways makes things easier for you.
Absolutely, because they used to play album cuts back then, you know, before the 12-inch. Absolutely, as long as it was in a dance band, and you know, there were a lot of albums that came out that was geared for that dance sound, I would call it. Well, I guess you call it, that's what they call it, disco. I just call it dance music.
So do you think there was still a lot of live remixing happening even with the 12 inches though? I mean, so you were still using instrumentals and still using
absolutely.
To make it, why did you want to make it your own? What was wrong with the original 12 inch that or not wrong with it, but what was it about the original 12 inch that made you guys say, you know what? I think it still could use...
Because you wanted to make it, you would say, I think it could still use a rebump. So I would just remix the beginning of a drum roll over or start with a break and just play the break for about 5 minutes and then go into the instrumental of the song and then play the vocal. I did that a lot of songs.
Right. A lot of it was about delayed gratification.
Yeah, like because especially after I started, like the Land of Oz, that was a big club. So when I really learned I got my chops there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So by the time, and doing private parties and stuff like that.
Right.
So by the time Lansdowne came along, I was really ready, baby. You know what I mean?
Carol told me that you had some of the quickest fingers.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Have you heard, in her interview, she talks about watching you do things so quickly. And I forget what she said specifically, which you'll have to go back and look at the clip.
I will.
She said you were the fastest, probably the fastest fingers that she ever saw.
Oh, that's quite a compliment, I would say. Coming from Carol, you know what I mean?
We have it on tape?
Well, I've seen every, just a segment, and not the whole segment of every month though. I have to watch everyone's interview.
I forget which part she says it.
I'm going to have to watch them all now, especially now that I've done mine. So.
Yeah. And I know. Well, because I want you to compare notes at a certain point, because I think eventually we'd like to have you all have a group discussion, maybe.
Oh, that would be fun, huh?
Yeah, just to get different perspectives. Everybody has different memories of things.
Right, you know what? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because
the truth emerges somewhere
in the middle, right? Or pieces of the truth.
Right.
It was 40 years ago, you know?
You got a pretty good memory, though. So you met Paul Egan at Wizard of Oz? I mean, at Oz? You think?
Yeah,
okay.
It was at the Wizard of Oz. I met him through because I met him before I met Ozzy. So I met him, I was babysitting for this girl in Columbia Point Housing Project. And I had a friend named Ozzy, and we weren't living together yet, Ozzy, at that time. Just how young I was. My mother, she didn't put many restrictions on me. Because me and Ozzy got an apartment when I was 16. I moved in with these kids on Beacon Hill first. You know, just to, they said, well, we need a roommate. And I said, well, all right. And it was like $15 a month, whatever the hell it was. That was my first apartment. It wasn't in my name, but it was, my apartment. My first apartment was with Ozzy, and that's when I met Paul Egan.
Right.
Was through Ozzy on Symphony Road. Oh my God, how long ago was that? And I met Paul then, and I met Paul before that actually. Before we had the apartment, and we hung out. Like he would come into town with his father's station wagon, and we would, go to the clubs and go up. I said I got a job, and he goes, where? And I said up at the Land of Oz. I said, why don't you come up? And I said, I'll let you play some records. So that's what.
So that's how he started.
Yeah, right? I think. I mean, he even before that, he liked records too. Like,
sure, but he hadn't really been a DJ.
No, I don't think he had really ever played. Like, and he was my friend, so and I knew he liked it too. Like, so.
And how long was Oz open for? The 2 years you were there.
Well, 2 years, I think, a little more than 2 years, because I think they closed when Lansdowne Street opened. Like, they stayed open shortly thereafter. And Lansdowne Street opened in September of '75, I believe it was. And they closed shortly thereafter that.
Was this 15 Lansdowne after Cabaret?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
So it was Cabaret first.
I haven't even talked about Cabaret.
Yeah, so let's back up a little bit, because this...